For 4 years, she'd been Sarah from QC, the quiet single mom who worked double shifts and never complained. Her coworkers thought her calm under pressure came from raising 2 kids alone. They didn't know it came from leading soldiers through firefights in Afghanistan. Welcome to Faces Behind Stories. Before we begin this powerful tale of hidden service and motherly courage, tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from today? And if you believe stories like this deserve to be heard, hit that subscribe button. These narratives honor the warriors who continue fighting, just on different battlefields. The Meridian Textile Factory sat on the industrial side of town, a sprawling complex of concrete and steel that had been manufacturing fabrics for 30 years. 3 shifts kept the machines running around the clock, producing everything from military uniforms to hospital scrubs. The night shift was always the hardest. Skeleton crew, fewer supervisors, and the kind of bone-deep exhaustion that came from working while the rest of the world slept. Sarah Chen had been walking these floors for 4 years, ever since her divorce left her with 2 kids and a mortgage she couldn't afford on a single income. At 34, she looked older than her years, the kind of tired that sleep couldn't fix. Her dark hair was always pulled back in a practical bun, safety glasses perched on her nose, and steel-toed boots that had seen thousands of miles of concrete floors. She worked quality control on the night shift, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., checking fabric samples and ensuring production standards. It wasn't glamorous work, but it paid $18 an hour with overtime, and the health insurance covered her daughter Emma's asthma medication and her son Michael's broken arm from last year's soccer season. To her 47 co-workers on the night shift, Sarah was exactly what she appeared to be. A hard-working single mom who never missed a day, never complained about the hours, and always volunteered for extra shifts when someone called in sick. She brought homemade cookies for the break room, remembered everyone's birthdays, and had a kind word for the newer employees who were still learning the ropes. When Jenny Martinez struggled with her first week on the production line, Sarah had stayed late to help her understand the machinery. When old Pete Wilson had his heart attack last year, Sarah had organized the collection to help with his medical bills. Sarah's got that mom energy, the younger workers would say, like she just handles everything without freaking out. What they didn't know was that unflappable calm hadn't come from PTA meetings and soccer practice. It had been forged in the mountains of Afghanistan, where Staff Sergeant Sarah Chen had led a special forces unit through some of the most dangerous territory on Earth, earning a Bronze Star and 2 Purple Hearts in the process. But that was a lifetime ago. Now she was just trying to make it through each shift, earn enough money to keep her kids fed and housed, and maybe, if she was lucky, catch a few hours of sleep before she had to drive Emma to school and help Michael with his math homework. The night of March 12th started like any other. Sarah clocked in at 10:58 p.m., 2 minutes early as always, and made her way to the quality control station. The factory floor was already humming with activity. Dozens of workers manning the textile machines, supervisors checking production quotas, and the constant background noise of industrial machinery that had become like white noise after 4 years. She began her routine, checking the first batch of fabric samples, logging quality measurements, and walking the production line to ensure everything was running smoothly. The work was methodical, predictable, and exactly what she needed after years of uncertainty and chaos in places where every day could be your last. Her station was positioned to oversee 3 production lines, giving her a clear view of most of the factory floor. She'd chosen this spot deliberately when she started the job, though she'd never explained why to anyone. Old habits from a different life. Always maintain situational awareness, always know your exits, always position yourself where you can see threats coming. At 1:23 a.m. during the scheduled break, she was in the employee break room microwaving leftover lasagna when Tom Rodriguez, a machine operator who'd been there for 15 years, sat down across from her. "You ever think about doing something else?" he asked, stirring sugar into his coffee. "I mean, this place is okay, but it's not exactly a career, you know? My daughter just started college, and I keep thinking maybe I should have aimed higher." Sarah smiled tiredly. "It pays the bills. That's enough for me right now." "You're too smart for this job," Tom continued. "I've seen you fix problems that the supervisors couldn't figure out. You've got leadership qualities. Hell, last month when that machine broke down and we were behind quota, you had us reorganized and caught up in 2 hours. "You should apply for management." She appreciated the sentiment, but management meant day shifts, and day shifts meant daycare costs that would eat up the extra salary. More importantly, it meant responsibility for other people's safety and well-being, and she'd already carried that weight for enough lifetimes. "I'm good where I am," she said simply. What Tom didn't know was that Sarah had already been responsible for the lives of dozens of people. She'd made decisions that determined whether soldiers came home to their families or were shipped back in flag-draped coffins. She'd led missions that were so classified they didn't officially exist, in places like the tribal regions of Pakistan and the desert valleys of Syria where American forces weren't supposed to be operating. The management experience was there, the leadership skills were there, but she'd traded those responsibilities for something more important: the chance to be present for her kids, to attend school plays and soccer games, to be the kind of mother she'd never had growing up. The break ended at 1:45 a.m., and everyone returned to their stations. Sarah resumed her quality control checks, walking between the production lines with the same methodical attention to detail she'd always maintained. The night shift was usually quiet. Fewer distractions, less drama, just the steady rhythm of work and the promise of a paycheck at the end of the week that would cover Emma's inhaler prescription and Michael's upcoming school field trip. At 2:17 a.m., everything changed. The explosion came from the loading dock, a thunderous crash that shook the entire building and sent workers scrambling for cover. The lights flickered, alarms began blaring, and the smell of smoke started drifting through the ventilation system. Sarah's reaction was immediate and instinctive. While other workers were still processing what had happened, she was already moving, not toward the exits like everyone else, but toward the source of the explosion. Her mind had shifted into a mode she'd hoped never to use again, but muscle memory from 3 tours of combat duty kicked in like flipping a switch: threat assessment, casualty count, defensive positions, escape routes. "Everyone, stay calm," she called out, her voice carrying across the factory floor with an authority that cut through the panic. "Move away from the loading dock area. Use the east exit." Tom Rodriguez looked at her with surprise. "Sarah, we should get out of here." "Go," she said, her voice steady and commanding. "I need to check if anyone's trapped near the dock." But as she moved toward the loading area, she realized this wasn't an industrial accident. Through the smoke and debris, she could see figures moving with military precision, wearing tactical gear and carrying assault rifles. They were spreading out across the factory floor, taking positions to control the exits. This was an attack. Professional, coordinated, and designed to trap everyone inside. Sarah Chen felt a familiar cold calm settle over her, the same feeling she'd experienced in the mountains of Afghanistan when her unit had been ambushed by Taliban fighters, the same focused clarity that had kept her alive through 3 tours of duty in the world's most dangerous places. She keyed the radio on her belt, standard equipment for quality control to communicate with supervisors. "This is Sarah in QC. We have armed hostiles in the building. I repeat, armed hostiles in the loading dock area. Do not use the west exit." The response came back immediately, crackling with static and panic. "Sarah, what are you talking about? This is a fire alarm." "Negative. I can see 6 armed individuals in tactical gear. This is not a drill. I'm initiating emergency protocols." She moved through the factory floor with the same stealth techniques she'd used in combat zones, staying low, using machinery for cover, and keeping mental track of every worker she could see. Most had followed her instructions and moved toward the east exit, but she could see several people trapped near the loading dock area, hiding behind equipment and too scared to move. That's when she heard the first gunshot. It echoed through the factory like a thunderclap, followed by shouting in a language she recognized, Arabic, with a Syrian accent. She'd heard that dialect before, in places where American soldiers weren't supposed to be, conducting operations that didn't officially exist against high-value targets. These weren't random terrorists. These were professionals, and they were here for a specific purpose. Sarah reached the trapped workers, 3 people huddled behind a textile machine, including Maria Santos, a young mother who'd started working at the factory just 6 months ago. They were terrified, crying, and had no idea what to do. "Listen to me," Sarah said, her voice calm but urgent. "We're going to move to the east exit. Stay low, follow my lead, and don't make any noise." "Sarah, who are these people?" Maria whispered, her voice shaking. "What do they want?" "I don't know yet, but we're going to get out of here safely. I promise." The same promise she'd made to her squad in Afghanistan. and she'd never broken it then either. She led them through the factory floor, using the same tactical movement principles she'd learned in Special Forces training. Move from cover to cover, check corners, listen for hostile movement, keep the group together. It was like riding a bicycle, muscle memory from a different life taking over when civilian skills weren't enough. They were halfway to the east exit when Sarah heard something that made her blood freeze. The distinctive sound of a phone ringing, followed by a conversation in Arabic. She couldn't see the speaker, but she could hear enough to understand the gist of the conversation. This wasn't a robbery or a random attack. This was something much worse. The factory produced fabrics for government contracts, including military uniforms and specialized materials for defense contractors. The attackers weren't here for money. They were here to destroy production capabilities and steal sensitive information about military supply chains. More importantly, they weren't planning to leave any witnesses. She'd heard enough of their radio chatter to know this was a termination operation, not a theft. Sarah made a decision that would define the rest of her life. She couldn't get all the workers out safely using conventional escape routes. The exits were monitored, and the attackers were too well positioned to allow mass evacuation. But she could do something else. Something that would draw their attention away from the innocent people who just wanted to go home to their families. She could become what she'd been trained to be. "Maria, take the others to the east exit," she whispered. "When you get outside, find the police and tell them there are at least 6 armed hostiles inside, probably more. Tell them this is a coordinated attack, not a random shooting." "What about you?" Maria asked. "I'm going to make sure everyone gets out safely." Sarah moved deeper into the factory, toward the administrative offices where she knew there was a security station with cameras and communication equipment. If she could reach it, she could coordinate with law enforcement and provide tactical intelligence. More importantly, she could draw the attackers away from the civilian workers and toward someone who knew how to fight back. The security office was locked, but Sarah had learned a few things about getting through locked doors during her military service. Within 30 seconds, she was inside, activating the camera system and assessing the full scope of the situation. 8 hostiles, not 6, all armed with assault rifles and wearing tactical gear. 2 stationed at each major exit, 2 roaming the factory floor, and 2 in the administrative area. Professional formation, military-style communication, and equipment that suggested significant funding and training from a foreign intelligence service. This wasn't a domestic terrorism incident. This was foreign intelligence operation, and the workers of Meridian Textile Factory had become collateral damage in someone else's war. Sarah keyed the security radio to contact law enforcement, but the frequencies were being jammed. Professional electronic warfare capabilities, confirmation that these weren't random criminals. She was on her own, with dozens of innocent people depending on her to do something she'd hoped never to do again. Time to remember who she used to be. Staff Sergeant Sarah Chen, 5th Special Forces Group, had spent 3 tours in Afghanistan conducting direct action missions against high-value targets. She'd led teams through hostile territory, eliminated threats, and brought everyone home alive. She'd earned her Bronze Star during the Battle of Wanat, her Purple Hearts from IED explosions in Helmand Province. Tonight, in a textile factory in the middle of America, she was going to do it again. The security office had access to the factory's fire suppression system, emergency lighting, and communication network. Sarah began systematically using each system to create chaos and confusion among the attackers while providing cover for escaping workers. She triggered fire suppression in strategic areas, plunging sections of the factory into darkness and forcing the hostiles to reposition. She used the intercom system to broadcast misinformation about police response times and worker locations. Most importantly, she began hunting. The first hostile never knew what hit him. Sarah moved through the darkened factory like a ghost, using skills she'd learned in the mountains of Afghanistan to neutralize threats silently and efficiently. The man was checking the administrative area when she emerged from the shadows behind him. Combat knife techniques, learned in special forces training and perfected in combat zones, were still as sharp as they'd been 4 years ago. 1 down, 7 to go. The second hostile was more challenging, positioned near the main exit with a clear view of the factory floor. But Sarah had learned patience in the military, and she'd learned that sometimes the best weapon is time. She waited until he was distracted by radio chatter, then moved with the same deadly efficiency that had once made her one of the most effective operators in her unit. 2 down, 6 to go. By the time the remaining hostiles realized they were being hunted, Sarah had already shifted the tactical balance. They'd come expecting to face unarmed factory workers. Instead, they found themselves up against someone who'd spent years learning to eliminate threats in hostile environments. The factory floor became a battlefield, but it was a battlefield where only one side had the training, experience, and motivation to win. When the first police units arrived 20 minutes later, they found a scene that would be classified and buried in reports that most people would never read. The threats had been neutralized, the workers were safe, and the person responsible was sitting calmly in the security office, writing a detailed after-action report. Sarah Chen was back at her quality control station the following week, checking fabric samples and maintaining production standards. The official story was that a security guard had stopped the attack, and the specific details remained classified at the request of federal agencies with interests in maintaining certain operational secrets. Her coworkers knew something had changed, though. The way she moved, the way she spoke, the way she seemed to see everything happening around her. They didn't ask questions, but they looked at her with a new kind of respect. "You were amazing that night," Maria Santos said during their next break. "I've never seen anyone stay so calm under pressure." "I've had practice," Sarah replied simply, "because that's what you do when you're a mother. You protect your family, no matter what it costs you. You keep the people you love safe, even if it means becoming someone you'd hoped never to be again. And sometimes, when everything goes wrong and innocent people need protection, you remember that some responsibilities never end. They just find new ways to matter." Sarah Chen never talked about her military service with her coworkers. She didn't need to. They could see it in the way she moved, hear it in her voice, feel it in the absolute certainty that she would never let anything happen to them. That was enough. Because the best soldiers don't just win battles, they protect the people who can't protect themselves. And the best mothers do exactly the same thing. Even if it means working a night shift in a textile factory, earning $18 an hour, and hoping no one ever has to find out what you're really capable of. Until they do. This story was brought to you by Faces Behind Stories. Have you ever worked alongside someone who seemed to possess hidden strength? Tell us about them in the comments below, and let us know what city you're watching from today. If you believe stories like this deserve to be heard, subscribe to support the channel. We honor the silent guardians who continue serving one shift at a time.